Well, folks, the creatively bankrupt Wizards of the Coast continue on their march to strip mine old campaigns of anything that is good and fun and bring it into their maw to chew into a homogenized paste fit only for hardback books and PDFs that'll be forgotten almost as soon as they're bought. I, of course, am talking about Wizards of the Coast revisiting classic campaign settings, and this bit of news comes to us. Now, this actually dropped on the 14th, but this is from comicbook.com, and we're going to have a quick gander at that article, which, of course, I will link to below. But before we get to that, I'd like to thank our friends over at Hellebard Games. Hellebard makes the kind of adventures that they'd like to play, whether it's for Castles and Crusades, for 5th edition D&D, or for the OSR. Old School is in play at the table with Hellebard Games, and you can find them on DriveThruRPG or on their website, hellebardgames.com. And of course, if you like this video, if you like the news that I'm bringing you, whether it's good news or not, please give the video a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, click the subscribe button and the bell icon for notifications. It's really helpful, and of course, leave me a comment below. I want to know what you think. So let's hop over to comicbook.com and check this out. Again, I will attach the link below. Dungeons & Dragons does not view the current revivals of Spelljammer, Planescape, and other campaign settings as one-shots, and plans to revisit at least some of these worlds in the future. At Gen Con earlier this month, comicbook.com had the chance to speak with D&D lead rules designer Jeremy Crawford in a wide-ranging interview about the future of Dungeons & Dragons in the midst of planning for the 2024 rules revisions. Note, there's no mention there of the 2024 50th anniversary of Dungeons & Dragons, and that should tell you where Wizards has put the history of the game in the minds of the public at large. But let's get into this some more. During the interview, comicbook.com asked about D&D's plans for its campaign settings, especially as Wizards of the Coast revisited many classic settings such as Planescape, Spelljammer, and Ravenloft in recent years. Our campaign setting books are very popular, Crawford said. People love the setting books that we've done, whether they're classic ones or new ones from Magic the Gathering, and they're often among our most popular books. Crawford also stated that he didn't look at the recent campaign setting books as one-shots, and that there were plans to return to many of the campaign settings in the future. We love the campaign setting books because they help highlight just how wonderfully rich D&D is. I think there may be a bit of a typo there. I think Jeremy meant, I love how well the campaign books sell because they make me wonderfully rich, but that's my opinion. They highlight that D&D can be gothic horror, D&D can be fantasy in space, D&D can be trippy adventures in the afterlife. In terms of Planescape, D&D can be classic high fantasy in the form of the Forgotten Realms. It can be sort of a steampunk fantasy like Eberron. We feel it's vital to visit these settings, to tell stories in them, and we look forward to returning to them. So we do not view these as one-shots. In fact, Crawford noted that the upcoming 2024 rules revision provides more opportunities to revisit these worlds, in part because the D&D design team doesn't have to keep going back to remake certain rule systems or rule books moving forward. This is another boon of the rules revisions. It means we can just keep journeying in the multiverse, Crawford said, rather than sort of having to reset the clock. The rules revisions mean that we can return and do different things the next time we visit a setting, look at it through a different angle, explore different parts of the setting, dig deeper in certain areas than we did before. If you imagine 5th edition D&D as a campaign, it means that the campaign can keep going. So we are going to get high level and see things that we haven't seen before. Comicbook.com also asked about the release timing regarding some of these campaign setting books, as Eberron, Dragonlance, and Spelljammer have barely been revisited since their initial campaign setting books were released in 5th edition. Crawford noted that part of the issue is that the D&D design teams want players to actually use the material they publish instead of flooding the market with too many books. We're also mindful of how much content people can actually use in any given year, Crawford said, when asked why there wasn't more support for these campaign settings. Like many people, I love deep dives into various settings because I'm a D&D fan first. I've been a D&D fan since I was 6 years old. It's so fun to get all of that detail, but we also know that after years of looking at groups' play patterns, if we give you too much information, really all we've done is given you a bunch of material you have no time to use. So our approach is to spread it out more, to give people the time to actually play the adventures they bought, to actually visit the campaign setting that they just acquired. Crawford notes that the D&D release schedule is structured so that players can not only read the material but play it, which differs from other periods in D&D history. What kind of gobbledygook is that? Our approach is to how we design for the game and how we plan out the books is a play-first approach. At certain times in D&D's history, it's really been a read-first approach. Well, heaven forfend, Jeremy, heaven forfend a dungeon master actually know what they're playing. Because we've had so many points in our history where we were producing many books each year, there was no way anyone could play all of it. In some years, it would be hard to play even a small percentage of the number of things that come out. Because we have a play-first approach, we want to make sure we're coming out with things at a pace where if you really want to, and even that would require a lot of weekends, evenings, and dedicated D&D to play, you could play a lot of it. Whoops. The play-first approach to the D&D release schedule is critical to the D&D team because they feel the game is strongest when it's actually played. We feel the real magic of D&D happens at the table. As much as we love creating these books, we love reading them. We're DMs. We also experience the joy of preparing for an adventure and building campaign settings. As fun as all of that is, the real alchemy, the wonder that beats at the heart of D&D happens when you're playing it. Because that's when these stories arise. Please stop saying stories. That's when these stories arise that no one imagined when they were preparing the game. That's when there were those moments that surprise even the dungeon master. I'll agree with that. And make people gasp or cry or laugh or shudder in terror if it's a horror game. And for us, that's why play is so important, because that's the heart of the entire game. So let me just give you my take on that. Let me just tell you something. First of all, to people who are fans of Forgotten Realms and Ravenloft and even Eberron, I'm sorry for what's about to happen. The Wizards of the Coast Thresher that's going to run over your game, because it's clear to me, as clear as day, that canon doesn't matter. Oh, we're going to change things. It's a multiverse. We're going to revisit things. We can go back in time and alter things. Like reducing an iconic character created by Gary Gygax to a height joke. But I'm not going to get upset about that specifically. Anyway, the quick take of this is that, yeah, they're bringing the Wheat Thresher for campaign settings. I didn't see Greyhawk mentioned in there, but they have appropriated and strip mined so much Greyhawk for crap with 5th edition that honestly, there's not much left for them to revisit but a hollowed out shell at this point. So, of course, I want to know what you guys think. So please leave a comment down below. Let me know how you feel about it. And, of course, as this develops, we'll talk about it some more. And I just want to say this in closing. Canon matters. Don't let these people tell you otherwise. Keep an eye on your campaign setting books. And if you're missing one, buy a used one now before you can't. Peace.